Hey everybody, this is Mike. Welcome back to the Z Motorsports shop and channel for Saturday morning shop tour number 5. Haven't done one of these in a while, so I thought maybe I would, as soon as I got a couple different things going on today, I thought maybe I'd throw the camera up and just do a little few-minute video today of what we've got going on here in the shop and see if I can get a few things marked off my whiteboard. As we kind of close out the 2019 year, it's been a busy year, it's been a very good year. But anyway, it's actually kind of nice outside today, so I thought I'd get a couple of things done and maybe take you, just like I say, a little tour around the shop. And I've got a couple little small projects going on, nothing major. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pull my 2006 2500 HD Duramax into the shop because we're going to put some new shoes on her today. All right, so some of you may have seen this truck from some of my other videos. This is my 2006 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD with the Duramax in it. I bought this truck in it's a 2006. Like I said, I bought it in spring of 2009 with 58,000 miles on it. So I have had it a little over 10 years now, and it just turned over 99,000. So obviously you can see I don't drive it a whole heck of a lot. This is my baby. I don't drive it too awfully much. I've only put about 41,000 miles on it in 10 years. So that ought to tell you I'm only putting about 4,100 miles a year on averaging. So anyway, I bought the truck, it was stock. I put an RCD lift on it with 325 60/20 tires, BF Goodrich's. This is before the KO2s come out. This is the original KO. I'm running MKW M86 wheels. I don't believe this wheel's made anymore. The tires, I love these all-terrains. I've had them on other vehicles. I've had them on multiple Jeeps, and they've been great. I have not been that impressed with them on my Duramax. I think maybe the weight has something to do with it. Don't look too bad because I rotated them a while back and put the others on the rear back there that I had here on the front. And I've chalked them, so I know I'm running tire pressures, all that. I just have not really been impressed with the way they've worn. So this go-round, and like I said, I bought these 10 years ago, but they've only got 41,000 miles on them. I figured even on a heavy truck, I would have got maybe closer to 50 or at least 50 maybe. Anyway, this time I decided to try something different, and I've been so impressed with the Nitto Ridge Grapplers that I'm running on my Jeep. That's the first experience I've had with Nitto. I have run Toyos in the past. I run Toyos on my old 88 Ford F-250 that I had converted into a dually. I run Toyos on that, had great luck with them on that, other than the fronts wore out, and obviously on a dually it wasn't really cost effective to rotate them, so I would just usually go through about three sets of front to every one set on the rear. But anyway, so I decided to go with the Nittos this time, and I went with the Terra Grappler. This is their Generation 2, and I decided to change size just a little bit. The 325 is a little over a 13-inch wide tire, and when I did put the lift on and everything, and these are basically 35.5-inch tires. I trimmed the front valance a little bit, and when I put my mud flaps on, I'm running some stainless mud flaps, I had to put a slight jog in them for when turning and hitting a dip. And even then, on my driver's side, if I'm turning just right and I go through a driveway or something, I just barely scuff my inner fender. So on this time, I decided to go just a little bit narrower. So I went with a 295 65/20, still the same 10-ply tire, a load rate E, but I decided to go just a little bit narrow. So this one here actually measures out about 1 inch and like 1.2 inches narrower than the one I've been running, and about 4/10 of an inch shorter. So I probably won't even notice the difference in diameter, and I'm hoping the little bit narrower will just help me with that little bit of rub when I'm turning and I hit a bump. So other than that, like I said, I could have run the same size. They make this grappler in both sizes, or in the 325 as well. I just opted to try something a little bit narrower. I'm excited to try it. I've heard a lot of good things about it. So that's what I'm going to run on this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my tires and wheels off and run these up to my local tire shop here. And I said if I bring them up, they'd be able to mount and balance them up for me. So I should be able to get them right back and put them on here later this morning.
I've got the tires and wheels all loaded up on my utility trailer, and I'm going to run and drop them off to be mounted and balanced real quick.
All right, so drop my tires and wheels off to be mounted and balanced. So while I'm waiting for a call that those are being completed, I figured I'd move on to the next project. I cut most of the pieces for this a couple of nights ago, so I want to see if I can get this knocked out today. This is just a shop tool, but it's been on my whiteboard for couple years now that I wanted to get done, and I've got a couple of Jeep axles that I need to redo or need to do for people this winter. So I want to be able to use this. So I figured I'd take a couple of nights and a Saturday or whatever it takes to knock this little project out real quick. What it is, I'm going to incorporate a mount rather than have a whole fixture to be able to go underneath the Jeeps and grab the axles, or any car, any vehicle for that matter. I figured I'd build a fixture that would bolt to my transmission jack. That way I have the capability of raising or lowering it with the vehicle on the lift. In the past, whenever I wanted to pull an axle out, or put an axle back in for that matter, is I will get everything unbolted that I can except for a couple of suspension links, lower the whole vehicle down to where the axle is supported on jack stands, and then raise the vehicle up away from it. And although that works great, it still requires you to go back underneath the vehicle on a creeper to undo those last few bolts, fasteners out from the links. And then as well as, when excuse me, which coming out isn't too bad, but going back in, sometimes you have to shift the axles one way or another or position them, and it's a little more it's a little more difficult laying on your back doing it. And I bought a lift so that I don't have to lay down on my back. So this way I can use the transmission jack to grab the axle, lower it down out of the vehicle, bring it over to the welding bench, do whatever, or the fabrication table, do whatever I needed to do on it, and then put it back on the transmission jack in the fixture, bring it back over and raise it up into position with the transmission jack. So like I said, it's nothing really high tech. It's just some scrap that I had on my metal rack. So I'm using some thick wall 1-inch tubing here with some thick wall 1 1/4 inch tubing. And I've removed the weld seam. It's electro welded square tubing. So I've removed the weld seam inside. So this slides freely. So this will mount onto the transmission jack in 2 positions. And then these will be able to slide for clearancing the differential, bracketry, anything like that. I've dug through my stuff and found a couple of thumb screws, so I'll be able to incorporate those. These pieces will come up from each of these. This will allow, I measured a 14 bolt GM, so that way I should have plenty of clearance from here so that it'll support. And then I have a couple brackets here that I need to cut out that basically I'll notch down into that tube 1 inch or so, and it will go something like that. And then I'll be able to move these inboard or outboard. And then when I'm not using it, it's just a simple matter of unfastening it from the transmission jack, and I'll just hang it on the wall in the storage bay. So that's kind of the project at hand right now. So what I've got pretty much everything cut out, except for the, I guess you'd call them the saddles that the axle is going to sit down into. I'll probably use the plasma to cut the radius, and then the bandsaw to cut the others, and then just round them off. This is just 1/4 inch plate. round everything off in the disc sander. But I'd want to machine a couple of bungs for the thumb screws to thread into to give me a little more thickness, because this this quarter wall this is eighth wall tubing here. It's a 1/4 inch wall on the other. 1/8 inch wall here isn't going to be enough, so I want to machine a couple of bungs and thread those to a 3/8/16. And then also I want to do the same underneath, so that I actually will bolt the fixture to the transmission jack from the bottom up, and I want to grab more than just the 1/4 inch wall thickness. So I want to be able to get up enough to where this will slide all the way into the fastening point. So I'll probably machine probably a 3/8 to 1/2 inch spacer here, and drill and tap that, and then weld those on. So I got 4 bungs to machine and weld on, and then I'll cut out the brackets and weld this thing together and paint it up and be done with this project. So I think I'm going to go over the lathe and knock the bungs out real quick, and then I'll come back over and cut the saddles out. And then for the end pieces here, I think I'll probably just put these in the vise in the mill and cut a 1/4 inch slot down each side, which will allow this to set down in it and allow plenty of surface area for a couple of nice welds. So, and this is nothing fancy here, just standard lathe work. So I've got some 1 inch cold rolled that I'm going to use in a collet for the main ones, the main bungs for the mounting of the fixture onto the transmission jack. And then I have some, I think this is 5/8, that's actually 3/4, some 3/4 inch cold rolled here that I'll do the same thing, and I'll cut these out and drill and tap them for 3/8/16 for the thumb screws. So I'm just going to go ahead and knock these out here on the lathe. All right, so I've got it faced off, drilled, tapped, and I'm getting ready to part it off here. So I want to make sure that I have my cutting tool square with the chuck here. So I like to just basically put the straight edge across the chuck, and then come over here to the tool holder, loosen it up, and just rock until there's no play. Snug it down, and that's ready to be parted off. And I'm part these off probably about 1/2 inch. So I'll set my dial caliper here, probably go to give it about 20 thousandths more for cleanup, and then come over and bump up against it. Boom, right there. Lock the x-axis on the carriage down, turn my speed down. Obviously you don't want to part off at the same speeds. Oh, a little faster than that. Let's go. And I also like to try to catch the parts so they don't just drop down in the pan on the lathe, and then you're fishing around through sharp metal. So I'll just put a little rod inside of there, push it in. Go ahead and start parting off. Also, I'll go in a little ways, and then I'll take a file and just come in and kiss off the 2 edges there to chamfer them, put a slight chamfer on them. And then go ahead and continue on with the parting. And make sure your tool is right at the right height. I made a little shop tool here that's got a magnet on the bottom. I use that for making sure that cutting edge is right dead center on your axis. Okay, there's one. Now I'll go ahead and tap the other one and part it off, and these 2 are ready to weld. All right, so I've got the threaded bungs machined. Just running a deburring tool over the holes for the where they're going to be welded to. Like I say, just put a slight chamfer on them. Now, another thing I do, and this is not necessarily not necessary whenever I do these, but I always like to drill and tap these as well. Then I'll thread a bolt down in and then run the bung down and snug it down. I do it for two reasons. Number one, alignment, and then number two, it gives you just that extra little bit of wall thickness in addition to the bung. Now some guys will actually just use the bung and drill this hole the size of the bolt hole and thread it on and just drop it down in so it self-centers. That's perfectly all right too. I just prefer to have a little extra thickness there, and then use a tap guide. Make sure it's threaded square and straight. Like I said, there's probably a little overkill, but whenever I am putting a bung onto something, I just like that little bit of extra thickness. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other two, and then the bungs are ready to be welded on. Oh, before I do that, I'll actually go ahead and use a roll lock and knock the mill scale off. All right, so I picked up my tires from the shop here, just unloaded them off the trailer. Again, these are a Nitto Terra Grappler G2, and they mounted up quite nice. They're a little narrower than my others, but they mounted up pretty good on my 20x9 MKW wheels. So, got the rear one just sitting on it right now. So I'll go ahead and clean up the wheels and torque them in place and put the center caps on. But first, with the weather as nice as it is, I've got a not so pleasant job on the coach, so I want to get addressed real quick before I put her to bed for the winter. So I pulled it out. And I actually have a valve that's leaking. Every time I pull the last two trips out this year, when I pulled the cap off to hook the stinky slinky up to dump at the campgrounds, I've noticed I've got a little bit of liquid coming out. So I've got a valve, I'm suspecting the black tank, but I got a valve that's not closing all the way. So it's understandable. The coach is almost 17 years old, so 125,000 miles on her, but it gets used quite a bit. So I'm gonna go ahead. I picked up two new valves. I'm pretty sure it's the black one, but I picked up a gray and a black. You see how I got to pull the whole thing out as an assembly. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace those valves real quick. And so I just tipped the coach. I made sure everything was drained out of it. The last campground we was at a couple weeks ago in Moab. So I've tilted the coach to the passenger side, and I'm going to pull this apart now and change this valve, these two valves real quick. So this job is done. I got the old valves removed, everything cleaned up, the assembly there in the middle cleaned, new valves installed, lubricated, and I'll put back together. All the fasteners torqued in place. So this job's done, and we'll go back inside the shop and finish up. All right, so I finished up machining the bungs and tapping the holes. These are all ready to basically to weld on. So like I said, here's how I like to weld these on. I'll thread that down on, and then I'll thread that down to where it just snug on it, and then go ahead and weld that on. Like so. And do the same thing on these ones. I did cut the thumb screws down a little bit. They were a little tough. I cut about 5/8 of an inch off of them. So these are all ready to weld, and I've got to cut those out and weld the rest of them together, and they are pretty much done. So I think before I get going on any more on this, I just wanted to get these machined so I could clean up the lathe. Now that these are done, machined, I'm going to go ahead and put the tires and wheels back on the truck, get the truck finished up and off the lift, and then move back over to this. I don't know if I'll get to finish this up today or not, but I'd like to, biggest things I wanted to do today was get those valves changed on the motorhome and the tires and wheels swapped out, or excuse me, the tires swapped out on the truck and get the front suspension greased on the truck. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
All right, so there are the new Nitto Terra Grapplers installed on the Duramax. So turned to look pretty good. Can't really tell they're that much smaller than the other ones. Like I said, these are only 4/10 of an inch diameter, smaller, and about 1.1 inches narrower. So they look pretty good on there, I guess. Still have enough width to them. They look decent, and they don't look funny with the 9-inch wide wheels. So, all right, well that pretty much concludes the Saturday shop tour. And I didn't get the fixture for the jack, the hydraulic jack done, but I've got everything ready to weld together. So all in all, a pretty productive day. Got a lot marked off the whiteboard. So appreciate the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more videos, and thank you for watching.